Host Chef AJ, and this is where I introduce you to amazing people just like you who are doing great things in the world that I think you should know about. Today's guest has been on before. He is a New York Times best-selling author, and he is the king of Instagram as far as I'm concerned. I was telling him before I logged on that no matter where I am, I always get a notification that he's live. He's helping so many people, not just through his book, which is the New York Times bestseller, Fiber Fuel, but through a new class that he's doing, because so many people have GI issues. That's why I took it upon myself to host a summit based on GI health. And he's helped me so much with the summit, introducing me to amazing people that you don't know that you're going to want to know. But you definitely, if you don't know him, want to know him. He cares so much about your health, about your gut specifically. And he's so passionate and knowledgeable about poop even. Please welcome Dr. Will B, the Gut MD. I never get tired of talking to you.
Oh, Chef AJ, it's such a pleasure to be here with you today on this Labor Day, and I'm excited to talk to you. I'm having a great day. My wife and my son and I, we went to the park today, and when I say the park, like I don't mean like the small community park. I mean like this place in the woods, and we were running the trails, my son and I, and there was like this in the middle of nowhere. They had this lookout tower where you could go and look over the low country. The low country where I live in Charleston, South Carolina, is where all of the like basically rivers from the mountains, from the Appalachians, converge down to Charleston Harbor. And so anyway, I'm having a great day. I'm really excited to be here. Happy to talk about gut health. Happy to talk about colorectal cancer and do what we can to educate and help people.
That is what's on everybody's mind because it's been on the news so much lately. What can we do to protect ourselves against colorectal cancer?
Yeah, well, I think that there's a number of strategies that we can unpack during our live today. And I think that it's the approach to protecting yourself from colorectal cancer is multifaceted. And if you want to be successful, which you absolutely can be, you absolutely can protect yourself from colorectal cancer. It is a highly preventable illness. But if you want to be successful, you have to take advantage of all of the opportunities that are there to help protect yourself. Don't just wear one layer of protection, wear two or three. So and we'll talk more about some of the details of how we go about doing that.
I think what's freaking everybody out is the passing of the wonderful actor Chadwick Boseman, the Black Panther, because he was so young, and ostensibly he was younger than the age that the colonoscopy is even recommended. So people are thinking, well, how can that happen? How, if we're not supposed to get a colonoscopy till 45, how are we going to know if we have colon cancer?
Yeah, no, I know, and it's very sad hearing about his passing, which for me. And I think this is true for virtually everyone. No one knew. No one knew that he was sick. And he was diagnosed at age 39, 4 years ago, with stage 3 colorectal cancer. I believe it was colon. And it unfortunately progressed and it ultimately became metastatic. So it became stage 4. And these are the questions that need to be answered. And I think where we start is this. Number one, we need to be aware of this threat. Colorectal cancer is not rare. 5% of people living in the United States will ultimately get colorectal cancer. And unfortunately, what we're seeing is that there is a shift underway in recent years that is creating increased risk among young people. So what we're seeing is that it's becoming far more common. The rate of colorectal cancer is actually on the rise among a younger population. By younger, I mean younger than age 50. And they've done these studies, Chef AJ. There were actually 2 big studies that came out in the year 2017, so 3 years ago, that honestly, they kind of rattled me a little bit as a gastroenterologist because my job is to protect people from colorectal cancer. And what these studies showed is that not only is there this shift, not only is there this increase in colorectal cancer in people who are young, but it's actually quite powerful in the sense that a person born in 1990 has twice the risk of colon cancer during their lifetime compared to someone born in 1950. So essentially in one generation, we have doubled our risk. And then if you actually look at rectal cancer is actually what is becoming even more common among a younger population, where we see someone born in 1990 has 4 times the risk of developing rectal cancer during their lifetime compared to someone born in 1950. So, number one, we need to acknowledge that we have this problem. By acknowledging that we have this problem, then it allows us to become conscious and smart and create strategies to protect ourselves. How do we do this? Well, number one, lifestyle matters. Lifestyle is important. There is no question. And there are certain specific things that we have identified that can increase our risk of developing colorectal cancer. And on the flip side, there's things that we've found that can decrease our risk of developing colorectal cancer. Before I share these things, I want to say that it is a fallacy to believe that there is absolute protection from any dietary strategy. It's simply not true. And so I will share with you what the risk factors are, okay? But I also want everyone to understand that when we have studied the risk of developing colorectal cancer in the Adventist health population, the people who were vegetarian or vegan did have reduced risk, but it was only by about 22%. So if 5% of people will normally get colon cancer during their lifetime, if you're a vegetarian or vegan, then we're talking about 4%. It's still really high. It's still enough to really scare me. So, but that being said, what are some of the things that we can do from a dietary perspective? Well, number one, the World Health Organization in 2015 identified processed meats as a carcinogen. They doubled down in 2020 and reconfirmed their position. Processed meats are a carcinogen that increase your risk of developing colorectal cancer. The second thing that they identified in 2015 was red meat. Red meat was identified by the World Health Organization as a probable cause, a probable carcinogen. And there's a number of mechanisms that explain why that's the case. But the point being, these are two things that, look, the average American right now eats more than their own body weight in meat on a yearly basis, right? So, and that level of consumption, which I would describe as being excessive, like ridiculously excessive, that level of consumption is what is making us so prone to developing colorectal cancer. What protects us? Fiber, my favorite, right? I wrote a book, Fiber Fueled. And when they've studied it, study after study after study shows us that dietary fiber protects us from colorectal cancer. There's a number of ways that that works. But the point being, every 10 grams of fiber that you consume gives you 8 to 10% reduced risk of developing colorectal cancer. That doesn't mean, unfortunately, that you can eat 100 grams of fiber and reduce your risk to 0. But what it does mean is that a high fiber diet is to our benefit. And here we are in the United States, and the average person is only getting 15 grams of fiber per day, which is minuscule. It's nothing. So, there are a few other things that we could talk about if we want to dive even deeper later on, Chef AJ. But I think that the point from my perspective is, number one, we need a dietary strategy. A plant-based diet is the preferred strategy. It's high in fiber, and it's absent of processed meats and red meat. All right, so we have that. But again, that is not foolproof. That is by no means foolproof. So in a young person, such as myself, there's 2 additional strategies that I would really encourage us to employ. Okay, so for the people who are listening at home today, there's 2 things I want you to know beyond diet. And I want you to do these things. I don't want you to just do diet. Number one, if you have a family history, you should discuss it with your doctor. If you have a family history, particularly in a first-degree family member, parent, a sibling, a child with colorectal cancer, or even a polyp, you should discuss it with your doctor because you may qualify for early screening. And we take advantage of this. I tell my own patients, I say, guys, when I find, for example, in a patient just this past week, I had a patient he was 50, and I found a huge polyp. So his colonoscopy saved his life, because if he never had a colonoscopy, he would have had colon cancer. And I told him, I said, we got to get your family members checked at age 40. All right. And they may think that's a drag. They may say, why are you making me do this? But I say, this is an opportunity to save their life and protect them. So early screening can be done if there is a family history. And then the third thing that I think is critically important, and I don't know if Chadwick Boseman had symptoms. He was not my patient, so I don't know any of the backstory with him. But if you have symptoms, you have to get checked. And so what are the symptoms to be aware of? Change in bowel habits, any sort of change. It may not seem like a huge deal to you, but that's actually the number one symptom that we find. Rectal bleeding. If you see blood in your stool, it may be easy to sweep it under the rug when you just see a trivial amount of blood. I want to tell you a quick story about a 35-year-old patient that I took care of recently, Chef AJ. She was 35, 2 kids, 6-year-old daughter, 3-year-old son. She saw a trivial amount of red blood in her stool, could have easily called it hemorrhoids and moved on with her life. She had not consumed any meat at all since she was 5 years old, 30 years without meat consumption. And we did a colonoscopy, and she had a massive rectal polyp. And that colonoscopy saved her life. If she didn't have that colonoscopy, she would have had rectal cancer. It was just a question of how soon. So if you see a change in bowel habits, blood in the stool, if you have symptoms of anemia, like shortness of breath, lightheadedness, weakness, fatigue, if you have anemia, a new anemia that is not explained, or low on iron, or if you have abdominal pain, these are all reasons to consider getting checked. And the earlier that you get checked, the better it is. Sorry for that very long answer. It's nice to see you, Chef AJ.
No, it's great. So what people are wondering is that a vegan diet doesn't necessarily protect you against getting colon cancer.
The Adventist Health Study, which there are 2 forms, Adventist 1 and Adventist 2. And I tend to gravitate towards Adventist 2 because it's our modern data, whereas Adventist 1 was really from the late 70s and early 80s. The Adventist 2 study showed a 22% decrease in the development of colorectal cancer among people who followed a vegetarian diet. So from my perspective, that is not bulletproof. That is not infallible. That is good, but it is not absolute to the point that I would feel comfortable, if I were that person, avoiding the opportunities to protect yourself. You should not lean on that.
Is there anything that'll make us bulletproof?
There's nothing that can make us completely bulletproof, because the problem is this: any person, there are going to be some people who get colon cancer in their 20s. Unfortunately, I've had some of them as my patients. There's going to be people who get diagnosed in their 30s. The best strategy is what I'm describing to you today, which is there's 3 layers to the strategy. Number 1, healthy diet, healthy lifestyle. All right. So ideally, the complete absence of meat, and ideally a plant-based diet, meaning you are consuming real fruits, vegetables, whole grain, seeds, nuts, and legumes. All right. So that's the first layer. The second layer, if you have symptoms, get checked. Use the symptoms as your opportunity to make sure that everything is okay. The earliest that you have your first exam, the safer that you are. So, for example, this young woman who's 35, she's, from my perspective, she'll never get colon cancer during her lifetime, because I can do an adequate amount of testing going forward to make sure I keep her safe. But if she didn't come in for this check because she saw blood in her stool, we would have had a serious problem very soon. And then the third thing is get screened. Get screened. And we can talk about some of the options or opportunities there. Get screened and get screened as early as possible. I'm going to tell you right now, I practice what I preach. I'm going to get checked probably this month. I just turned 40. All right. I'm going to get checked probably this month. And you know why? Part of it is because I have seen too much stuff. And I got 2 little kids, and I am not going to allow that to happen here.
How do you get, I mean, I remember when I had precancerous polyps, they wouldn't even do a colonoscopy on me. They said, well, you didn't have a first degree relative die. I mean, has it changed? Are the insurance companies better at screening now that this has become so prevalent?
Well, okay, so the problem with the insurance companies, I hate this. It drives me nuts, is that what you have on their side is a business that is numbers, right? They're not seeing real people like me and you, or the people who are here on this call today. They're not sitting there empathetically thinking about what is going to save the most lives possible. What they're doing is, I hate to say this, is they have an actuary who is a math whiz that's crunching numbers and saying, how do we make and save the most money possible? And there's a threshold, Chef AJ, where it makes sense on their end to be doing more colonoscopies, to be doing more stuff, because that's a lot cheaper than treating people for cancer. But the problem is that they're not worried about the person who's 30 years old and may develop colon cancer, because that doesn't necessarily, like, there's not enough of those people for them to say, oh, this is going to make us or save us money. So I think the point from my perspective is that, number one, the guidelines are shifting. Many insurance plans will support a colonoscopy, whether you have family history or not. Many insurance plans will support a colonoscopy at age 45. And if you have a family history, if you go through the proper channels, meaning if you, like, for example, if you come to see me as a gastroenterologist, I don't mean that you're literally going to come to see me. I'm not trying to get you as my patient, but if you come to see a gastroenterologist, we can make sure that the proper documentation has been made, and we can put up a fight with your insurance company to get it covered. So, and we do it all the time. And so, anyway, I think it all starts with being aware of where the opportunities lie. What is the age that you should go and get checked, and talk to your doctor about it. And then and that way you can make sure you're in the system at the earliest possible stage.
So people are asking if everybody should get screened, and Jean wants to know how often people should get screened, and Lori wants to know if Cologuard is good enough.
Yeah. All right. Everyone should be screened. And from my perspective, everyone should be screened at the earliest possible stage, the earliest possible opportunity. All right. So now, how often do you need to be screened? It depends on the individual. Let's pretend that I am an average risk person with no family history. Okay. I will qualify for colonoscopy, depending on my insurance plan, at somewhere between 45 and 50. I'm going to try at 45. If that colonoscopy is stone cold normal, I won't need another one for 10 years. But if I have a history of colon polyps, if I have a family history, if I have inflammatory bowel disease, if I have a genetic predisposition, if I have any of these things, it's going to change how frequently we do this, and it's personalized. It could be anywhere from 1 year, it's usually not, don't worry. It's anywhere from 1 year all the way up to potentially 7 years. And so, and there's different forms in there. It's hard for me to, without kind of overbearing you guys with too much information, it's hard for me to paint with finite enough strokes to really give you the entire picture. The bottom line is that there are protocols that I follow as a gastroenterologist to personalize how soon we come back and do it again. All right, Cologuard, let's talk about that for a moment. So let me say this. If you are the type of person, I don't mean you personally, Chef AJ, but I want to speak to the people at home, because obviously I feel very strongly about all this. If you're the kind of person who says, I'm not comfortable with colonoscopy, I'm not going to do it. If that's who you are, that's okay. That's okay. There's a lot of people who feel that way. That's like 1 in 3 people in America. And the problem is that 1 in 3 people in America, they never show up for anything. They just don't do it. They've paid for it with their insurance. They've already paid for it and they don't do it. And so this is where, to me, the Cologuard is very, very well positioned. I would not compare it directly like apples to apples with a colonoscopy. All right. A colonoscopy is a superior test. The colonoscopy allows me to be more specific in being sure that there is no colon cancer. It's a better test for detecting colon cancer. It allows me to identify polyps at a stage before cancer and remove them. And it's much more sensitive, meaning it's much better at detecting those polyps. The Cologuard is not good at detecting polyps. It's just not good. So the problem with the Cologuard is you're kind of waiting until you actually have cancer and then you find it. Whereas if you went in there with the colonoscopy, you would find a polyp and you would remove that polyp painlessly and you would move on with your life. So I don't consider them to be equal. To me, the colonoscopy is the superior test, but I would much rather you do a Cologuard than not show up, because when you not show up, that's how you really expose yourself to risk.
Linda's asking, is the sigmoidoscopy okay instead? Because I find that doctors just won't do that when you ask.
Yeah. Okay. So sigmoidoscopy is technically part of the guidelines. Okay. It is technically part of the guidelines. I almost never do a sigmoidoscopy in lieu of a colonoscopy, and I'll explain to you the reason why. Number one, you still need to prep for a sigmoidoscopy. So, and the hardest part of the whole thing with a colonoscopy is the prep. Number two, the majority of people who get sigmoidoscopy are going to want to receive sedation. You don't have to, but you don't have to for colonoscopy either. You could go without it, but the majority of people are still going to be sedated. So you're still going to prep, you're still going to be sedated. Why would we stop halfway and not examine the entire colon? And if the colon is a 6-foot long balloon, with a sigmoidoscopy, we're catching the bottom 3 feet, but we're not catching the other 3 feet. And the problem is that the other 3 feet, which corresponds to your right side and up across the top of your abdomen up here, that's the part of the colon where actually we're having the biggest problem with colon cancer these days. It's actually where we're finding the vast majority of cancers is on the right side, on your right side, which is where you don't see with a sigmoidoscopy. So from my perspective, why prep, why be sedated and do a half thing when you could just do the whole thing?
It's sort of like doing a mammogram on one breast, huh?
Yeah, kind of. Exactly. Like, why would you do a mammogram on one breast? That's actually a great analogy.
Thank you. So Elizabeth wants to know, what exactly is a polyp? By what mechanism does it form? And how does it turn into cancer? And how long does it take for a polyp to turn into cancer? And do they always turn into cancer?
So there's many different types of polyps. The word polyp is a very generic word that we use in medicine. You could find polyps on your skin. You could find polyps in your nose. You could find them in your stomach. And yes, you will find them in your colon. And not all polyps in the colon are created the same. The type that we're trying to find is called an adenoma. An adenoma is a precancerous polyp, which sounds kind of scary, but let me unpack that a little bit. It's a growth, okay? It's a growth on the lining of the colon. It can come in many different forms and shapes. It can look like a ball and chain. We call that pedunculated. It can also be raised. We call that sessile. And then it can be very flat. It can be flat and really actually quite hard to see at times. So these adenomas, if you let them grow for 15 years, they'll turn into cancer. The problem is that you would never know that you have an adenoma growing unless you happen to go in there and do a colonoscopy, because they never cause symptoms. You could have a big, big polyp. It still doesn't cause symptoms the vast majority of the time. So this is why we have to get in there and look for them when a person does not have symptoms. These growths, where do they come from? Well, they start on the lining of the colon, initially very small. So like, for example, I just scared my cat, by the way. I got this pen, right? It'll start off literally being the size of the tip of this pen, very small. But eventually, it's more like the size of this eraser head. Now, that's an average size polyp. When I find a polyp, this is typically the size, about the size of an eraser head. But it'll grow, it'll double, it'll keep doubling and doubling and doubling until it turns into a blueberry and then a raspberry and then a strawberry. And when it's a strawberry, it's ready to turn into cancer. And so you want to catch it way before then. So now, where do they come from? What's very interesting, Chef AJ, is that we found that there are definitely changes in the microbiome associated with the development of these polyps. This is not just the food that you eat having a direct effect on the lining of the colon. This is actually that your microbiome has a major say in what happens here. And this may explain why, when they tested dogs, they found that dogs were able to smell colon cancer when they were properly trained with sensitivity that was quite remarkable. Like more than 95% of the time, they could identify who had colon cancer with these trained dogs. It's because there's changes to the microbiome that these dogs are able to detect that we're not able to. So yeah, so that's a part of it. And there's a number of mechanisms that produce this pathway where you're basically like disrupting DNA turnover and creating this abnormal growth that initially is a polyp, that initially we call it benign because it's not cancer yet, but that benign polyp can turn into cancer.
How long does it take? And could that account for the fact that even if somebody is following a very healthy plant-based diet now, most people weren't born plant-based and eating this way. So they could have been growing them for years, ostensibly.
Yeah, 100%. And we think it takes 10 or 15 years for one of these polyps to start off as an eraser tip and grow into that strawberry that we're talking about that then becomes cancer. So there is a latency. That period of time, that's our window of opportunity, right? And if you think about, like, this is the way that I'm thinking about it as a gastroenterologist, where my career and my job is to try to protect people. When I think about this, I look at look, if we could get in during that window and do the right test, we can painlessly remove that polyp. Even if it's a strawberry, I can painlessly remove it and it's done. It's completely gone. It's not a threat and it'll never grow back. And so that's where the opportunity lies, is that you have to get in during that window of opportunity and get it out.
Nice. So people are wondering, is it always diagnosed? Does it ever miss cancer? They're asking. Can it ever miss the cancer? Yeah.
Can a colonoscopy? Yes. A colonoscopy can technically miss cancer. It's not a perfect test. There is no perfect test. The best test is colonoscopy. More than 95% of cancers that are present will be detected by colonoscopy. More than 95%. There's no other test that can approximate that number. So, but there is no perfect test, and we shouldn't, the fact that there is no perfect test, that shouldn't be a deterrent from us taking the best available test to protect ourselves.
Right. So people are concerned about the risks, what they are, and about the prep. Maybe you can talk about it, because I'm probably one of the few people that really did have a friend that died of a routine colonoscopy. I know it doesn't happen often, but yes. In his case, he was healthy and he didn't really want one. He was 60, the doctor, and one day he showed up at work and then he never came back. So that's why I'm so scared to get it, because I really did know somebody.
Oh, I am with you. I'm very sensitive to that. Right. I don't think that this should just be Dr. B, my foot is on the accelerator and we're not going to have a conversation about whether or not we should tap the brakes. I think you're right. I think that we need to be conscious and aware of the realities of doing a colonoscopy. There are risks. There are people that do get hurt by doing a colonoscopy, but it's important to put those risks into context against the risk that exists on the other side. And the risk of perforation is exceedingly low, exceedingly low. Let me give you an example. We have 3 doctors in our practice. We do thousands of colonoscopies per year. During the time that I've been in our practice in Charleston since 2016, we've had 0 perforations. Thousands of colonoscopies per year, 0 perforations over the 4 years that I've been with this practice. So the risk is exceedingly low of perforation. And then the risk of death from colonoscopy is even less than that. It's possible. And the problem is we have to acknowledge that threat, right? But then we also need to be conscious of the threat that exists on the other side, which is that some of us know a person who's been injured by colonoscopy. Virtually all of us know someone who's had colon cancer. And this is exceedingly common, 160,000 people in the US alone per year. And the number of deaths from colon cancer exceeds 1,000 people per week. So, Chadwick Boseman, it's very hard for me because I've had patients like him, and it hurts me and bothers me when I hear that this happened. But there were 999 other people the same week. And it's just, so I'm glad that it brings attention to this important topic, because we need to be aware that this threat is so pervasive in the United States, and it's all of us. We're all at risk.
It'd be so cool if they could invent something that was as effective as a colonoscopy, that wasn't as invasive. And I'm thinking, wouldn't it be cool if I could just swallow a pill that was a camera and then poop it out, and then you could see everything you needed to see?
You know what? You technically can. You technically can do that. We have a pill cam. The issue is that the pill cam, the colon, first of all, has a caliber, meaning that the size of the colon is like this. And this pill is small, right? It's a pill, and it's just tumbling. It's just tumbling as it goes through. And as it tumbles, it may see 60% of the colon, but it can very easily miss important things. And that's the problem. But the reality is this, Chef AJ, what you're talking about is a huge opportunity, right? And because if you could improve upon colonoscopy and create something that is easier, safer, more palatable for people to do, then whoever comes up with that is going to make $1 bazillion. And so, the point being that people are trying. And I think that there's a very real chance that in the next 5 to 10 years, we have something that's even better.
Yeah, I think that'd be amazing, because then I'd be more apt to get one. How often should you get them? So Misty's saying, I'm 41. Should I get screened? Does it depend on family history, or should everybody just at a certain age get at least one? And then how often should you have them? Does that also depend on what happened during the colonoscopy?
By age 50, everyone should have one. By age 50. So if you're 50 and you haven't had one, then you should get checked. You're already paying for it with your insurance. You already spent the money. You might as well take advantage of it. Some plans, so the guidelines recommend that if you are African American, you start at age 45. Now, obviously, that would not have helped Chadwick Boseman, but 45, we move it forward for African Americans. The American Cancer Society has shifted their recommendation to 45. The problem is the American Cancer Society is not the decision maker here. I wish they were, because they're much more honest. You can't lobby the American Cancer Society, or at least I don't think you really can be that successful with that, but you can lobby our government. Well, anyway, there are some insurance plans that will cover a colonoscopy at 45. To be done younger, you have to have a family history. But I think another thing to keep in mind is, look, this is not Dr. B trying to tell you how to game the system, but maybe this is Dr. B trying to tell you how to game the system. Because if you go to your doctor and you say, I saw blood in my stool, we have the grounds to do an exam. And that's all that it takes. So now you may need to cover it through your individual insurance plan. So you have to check with your insurance plan to find out what that cost would be.
So Cynthia's saying that her concern with the Cologuard is she's heard they can have false positives and even false negatives.
Yes. Yeah, that's one of the problems with any test, is that each test, without boring you guys with the details of sensitivities and specificities and how that all works and the statistics, every test can have false positives and false negatives. And the the issue with the Cologuard is that there are actually a higher percentage of people who end up getting a colonoscopy after a Cologuard that don't need one than there are people who have colon cancer with a positive Cologuard. So you're more likely to have a false positive than you are to actually have colon cancer when you get that test and it turns out positive. Now, in some ways, that's a good thing. But the point of the test is if it's positive, you have to move on to colonoscopy. What's scarier to me is actually the false negative rate, which the biggest issue that I have with the Cologuard is you could have a big stinking polyp that's ready to turn into cancer, and the Cologuard has a very legitimate chance to miss it. And that's a problem because we missed the opportunity to remove it before it was cancer. And when we come back years from now, we're going to have a cancer on our hands that we have to deal with. So that's the problem that I see with Cologuard that I don't really like. One other thing with Cologuard, just for full disclosure, because I think it's important for people to know this. If you do a Cologuard and it's positive, your insurance company is not going to pay the bill for your colonoscopy. You will be paying the bill because they don't consider that to be a screening exam anymore. Now they consider this a diagnostic exam because you had a positive Cologuard.
That is so interesting. So we have people that they're saying they're still too scared to have one. I like the idea of the dog sniffing me. That would be like the way I would go if that was really, really effective. Gina says, do they have, or do you think they might ever have genetic testing for colon cancer the way they do for breast cancer?
We do have genetic testing, but the genetic testing is limited to the people who have a family history that warrants having genetic testing. And the vast majority of colon cancers are not genetically motivated. The vast majority of colon cancers are what we define as sporadic, meaning that it's just chance, and it's it's a combination of your diet, your lifestyle, and your genetic risk that causes you to ultimately develop it. So the problem is with this particular type of cancer, it's not so genetically motivated that we could just do a genetic test and know who needs testing and who doesn't.
So Cheryl says she's been scared to get one, and she wants to know, would it hurt if she does it without the sedative?
Yeah, I understand that. I definitely understand that sentiment. To be honest with you, I do this for a living. I'll be doing colonoscopies this week. And I personally, even though I know how safe they are, and I know how well people do with sedation, for me, I just feel weird about being sedated. So I totally can relate to that sentiment. You can do the colonoscopy without sedation, but the reality is what I found is that you certainly would not do that for fun. And the sedation is so safe and effective. And the people who I talk to about this, who are in my clinic, these are my patients, we have a conversation and we sort of unpack, the choices. And ultimately it's their call, what they want to do. But the ones who get the sedation, they realize after it's over, they're like, that was so easy.
Wow. You ever find anything up there that you shouldn't have? I don't mean just a polyp, but who knows, a quarter.
There
maybe?
are stories. You wouldn't find that routinely on a screening exam because usually it's the person who's having an issue. But every gastroenterologist has stories of weird things that they found.
What have you found? Anything yet? Barbie doll shoe, maybe?
Oh my gosh. All right. So this was years ago. This was in the VA in Chicago. And we had a patient who had this wooden device that looked like a torpedo, and it got trapped up in there. It was wooden and quite large, and it showed up on the x-ray. And the patient claimed that he fell. Okay. I didn't buy that claim, but anyway, he fell and it ended up inside. And anyway, what we ended up doing was we prepped him for colonoscopy. And actually, in the process of prepping him, it took care of itself. And so we never had to go in there to do it. So good for him.
That's amazing. Yeah, talk about the prep, because I mean, I've had two, and they really aren't fun. Nobody would ever do a colonoscopy for fun. So is there a way to make that experience of prep less, difficult? And people are saying, can you just fast? Can you do juice? It's been a long time since I've had one.
Yeah, well, so the issue is that if you're doing the colonoscopy for this reason, you don't want to have a bad prep. You really want to have a good prep, because my ability to do my job as a gastroenterologist is proportional to the quality of the prep. If it's a poor prep, I can't see anything. So, and it ends up becoming a waste of your time. Why go through the prep and go through the sedation and that entire process, and then wake up and I tell you, we need to do this again, because that just was, not of any value. So when it comes to the prep, a few things that I would recommend. So number one, if you are someone with a history of constipation, the most important thing is you have to make sure that you are not constipated when you go to do the prep. Because if you are constipated, you are going to struggle with this prep. And I hear it from my patients it's like, oh, surprise, they're constipated. We didn't really expect that. And they come in and they tell me, they're like, doc, I drank the prep and like literally did not have a bowel movement for 3 hours. And my tummy looked distended like I was pregnant. Well, that's a person who's super constipated and they just didn't realize it. So you got to make sure that the bowels are moving prior to doing the prep for your colonoscopy. A couple other things. In the event, Chef AJ, that you end up doing another one, and this is for everyone else at home too. All right, make sure the prep is nice and cold. So use a lot of ice. Nice and cold. Use a straw. All right, use the straw to bypass the tongue. And the other thing is take your time. So if you start to feel uneasy, like you need a break, take a break. If you called me and you said, doc, I'm feeling a little bit nauseated, I would tell you, take a 30-minute break. And then you can start back up later. So those are some of the strategies that can help.
Great. So watching live is Roxanne, who says, please make sure that you have your colonoscopy, whether it hurts or not. I did not have mine, and now I'm stage 4. I'm so sorry about that.
I'm sorry to hear that. And I'm glad that Roxanne is sharing that so that other people can hear, because I think it's important for everyone to understand the other side.
So Cheryl says, if you decide not to get sedated, what is the pain level? There's not really pain, is there? I mean,
it's discomfort. Your doctor will work with you to try to make it more manageable. So, imagine, if someone's my patient and we're doing the colonoscopy and they're not sedated, I'm talking to them and they're completely awake and they're looking at the screen and they're seeing what I see. And we're working our way through things. And I tell them, I say, look, if you feel any discomfort, like you're going to feel pressure is to be expected. If you're feeling discomfort, just tell me. And I will try to make adjustments to try to keep you more comfortable. So that's the approach that we take.
Yeah. I mean, I get anesthesia for teeth cleaning. I ain't doing it without sedation.
Personally, I would always do sedation for me. So, I mean, but I get it. Like, I understand, because I feel the same way. I'm like, I'm a little bit nervous about being sedated, but I definitely would be sedated for me.
Yeah. So Anne says, I know 2 people with tears in their colon after the colonoscopy. So is that a common side effect?
Tears are very rare. So again, perforations certainly less than 1 in 1,000. And, we, as I told you, in our medical practice, 3 doctors, at least 2,000 colonoscopies per year, probably 2,500. And, I've been in the practice since 2016. We've had 0 perforations, 0 tears.
So let's all go to South Carolina. We'll get a bus and we'll all have Dr. Will. If you did it, I think I'd feel very comfortable. Because last time I had one, he said, oh, I had a really hard time. You had a very tortuous colon. I don't know what that means, but he said it took a long time.
Yeah, happens. That happens.
Yeah. So this is a fun question from Cora. She says, why is the colonoscopy so fast? It seemed like it was less than 5 minutes. Can you inspect 6 feet of the GI tract that fast?
Okay, so the colonoscopy, the time that we're doing the exam, so a typical colonoscopy will take 10 to 15 minutes. All right. The time that we're doing the exam is actually on the withdrawal. So you have the opportunity to actually judge the quality of the job that your doctor has done based upon the time that they take on the withdrawal. We have studies that show us, Chef AJ, that the quality of the exam is proportional to the time that the doctor spends, which makes sense, right? I mean, if they're taking their time and they're really inspecting it, it's going to take longer. And if they're whipping and just kind of going real fast, then it's not going to take very long. And so the magic number is 6 minutes. Your colonoscopy on the withdrawal side should take at least 6 minutes, meaning that your full colonoscopy should take at least 7 minutes, because it takes at least a minute to get to the end of the colon, typically a couple minutes.
Nice. So let's see, there was a question here. Hold on. Okay, this is, I'm so sorry, because what I see moves. She goes, Elizabeth says, is there any new technology like for a virtual colonoscopy? Do you mean like on Zoom?
We had, we had this technology that was kind of trendy 12 to 15 years ago, called CT colonography. All right. Or some people called it a virtual. And what they would do is you would prep. All right. So you would do the full prep. You would go to get a CAT scan. But when they do the CAT scan, they don't tell you this ahead of time. They inflate your colon with air, which is really uncomfortable. And then they take the CAT scan. And if they find something, which the majority, not the majority, but in a very large percentage, about 35% of the time, they would see something. Then they'd say, oh, well, you got to go get checked with a colonoscopy. And so then you have to prep again. So the point is that entire sort of strategy has really fallen out of favor. I personally have not used that strategy as the primary source of screening in a very long time.
Nice. Shelley says, I have heard that the scope that is used cannot be 100% sanitized and can transfer bacteria to one person to another. Is that true?
So technically, when I'm talking to my patient prior to doing the colonoscopy, it's a part of our process to give them all of the risks, to make sure that they're able to make an informed decision on whether or not they want to do it. And one of the things that we will tell them is there's a risk of bacterial infection. All right. And we'll say that. In my entire career, I've never had someone actually have that happen. So, the process that we use to clean our scopes is very detailed. And our unit, our endoscopy unit, is judged routinely to maintain its certification, to make sure that we're exceeding the standards needed to protect our patients and maintain a safe environment. So, in terms of the safety of our patients, we take the safety very serious. And that, although I have to say it's possible, that's certainly not probable. And I've literally not seen it in my whole career.
So Shelley says, is there any concern about disrupting the microbiome with the prep because it's so harsh?
That's a great question. So our studies do suggest that when we do a complete bowel flush, that it does alter temporarily the microbiome. But we also think that the recovery is very quick, because basically this is a 24-hour thing. It's not sustained. And then you just get right back on track with your normal diet. And so basically what you're doing is you're restoring the flora very quickly. That's quite different than, like, for example, taking an antibiotic. So I personally don't see this as a deterrent. I don't see this as a reason to avoid doing the colonoscopy. I certainly would not say, oh, well, you can decide whether or not you want to do it based upon the damage to the microbiome. And I, to be honest, I don't see patients who are having flare-ups of their disease because they did a colonoscopy. I just don't see that.
Gina says, what's the best vegan diet to follow 4 days prior to your colonoscopy?
Oh gosh, that is a great question. So basically what you want is you need to avoid the foods that are heavy in the insoluble fiber, which is the roughage. So things that have skins and things of that variety, you're going to struggle more with. So you need to actually taper down on your bean consumption, taper down on, apples and peppers and stuff of that variety, and look more towards, for example, if you blend it up and you homogenize it, smoothies are completely fair game. looking more towards starches and things of that variety. So like heavily cooked.
Nice. Brandy says, if somebody is willing to pay out of pocket, what do colonoscopies generally cost?
It depends on the individual place. So what I will tell you is that if you go to the hospital is very expensive, very expensive. And this is the reason why having independent physician-owned practices is to our benefit. So like, for example, if you came to me and said, Dr. B, I want to do a colonoscopy, but my insurance won't cover it, or I don't have health insurance, why would I would give you the cost of the colonoscopy on the spot? And that would be like literally 25% of what it would cost at the hospital. Typically, a colonoscopy is going to be somewhere in the range of $800 to $1,200, something like that.
That's not bad. That'd be cool if one day we have in-home colonoscopies,
Yeah, I would love to have an RV that drives around and people can just show up and get their colonoscopy.
So since this broadcast began, I've been posting a link to this course that you're going to be teaching. And Elizabeth is saying, what is it about? It sounds amazing, by the way, and talk about it, because it sounds like such a great opportunity for people, because there's so many questions that I can't get to. Actually, I haven't even gotten to the ones that were written in advance, which I hope to get to, but I'd love for you to talk about the course.
Okay, thank you. I am super excited because I feel like there's an unmet need in our system. And the way that I see it is like this. You come and you see literally me, okay? Like, I have great confidence that I'm providing the best care that I can provide to my patients. I work really hard to be able to do that. But you come and see literally me, we have 30 minutes together. 30 minutes. And so I'm going to spend literally probably the first 10 to 15 minutes just listening to you and letting you share your story with me. And that doesn't leave much time for us to really unpack what's going on with you and have that complete understanding of what is the problem, what is the root of the issue that needs to be addressed, what is the best approach from a diet perspective, from a lifestyle perspective. Are there any supplements that can help you? And and sort of building the proper understanding of making these conscious health choices. So like, for example, Chef AJ, we're hanging out here and we're talking for the last hour about one topic, which is colorectal cancer screening, right? And the average person who comes in to get their actual colonoscopy would not be able to go to the level of detail that we've gone on this one topic during the last hour, right? So I feel like there's this unmet need. People need education. In today's world, in 2020, I don't want you to just trust your doctor. I want you to be your own health advocate. I want you to be a very well-informed consumer. And I want you to take advantage of all of the opportunities that are there. So when I talk about colon cancer, for example, I talk about diet, I talk about lifestyle, and I talk about what are the screening tests that we can do and when can we do them. All right, so we have strategies. The same is true for virtually all people who want to optimize their microbiome. I want you to do diet. I want you to do lifestyle. I want you to have the right supplements. You're not going to take 20 supplements, I can assure you that, but there are some that you should take. And I want you to know how to actually navigate the healthcare system, to talk to your doctor, to ask the right questions, to know what tests you should probably be getting. I want you to have all those tools. And that, to me, is how you make yourself the most successful, is to not just lean on your doctor to tell you what to do, but also not to avoid your doctor and just eat well. I want you to have all of it. And that's how you ultimately will be the most successful. So I built this course to fill that need, that unmet need. And it's a 7-week course. Let me say, like my book, all right, I'm very proud of this book. All right. I worked extremely hard. I worked for a year writing this book, basically 2 years. And I get nice messages from people from around the world who are reading it, and it's making a difference for them. But the book is really an introduction. It's not the complete conversation. And this course, to me, is the complete conversation. 7 weeks, each week has a theme. So like week 1 is the microbiome. Week 2 is finding your true diagnosis. Like, how do you know what to treat if you don't even know what you're treating? Week 3 is all about poop. So like many people aren't willing to admit it, but we're all kind of curious. What's the deal with our poop? How can we use that information to understand our health better? It's actually quite important. Week 4 is food, and it's not just what do you eat. It's also how do you handle food sensitivities. We need a strategy, and we need to go beyond what I wrote in the book. I actually need to give you the full protocol. Week 5, perhaps my favorite week in the course, is the reality that, like for example, Chef AJ, you are a real person. You're not just a series of symptoms. You're a human being and you have a story. And that story brings you up to who you are today. And it informs who you are, and it also informs why you are the way that you are. And as a doctor, we've unfortunately drifted away from having this conversation of getting to really know our patients and what their story is that makes them who they are. And instead, because of time constraints, we're just asking them about their symptoms. That story is important. We need that information. We need to understand that story and harness that energy as we move forward, because that's how we're going to make you the best possible. So that's what week 5 is about, is like understanding your personal health journey and how do we use that information moving forward. Week 6 is all about lifestyle. How do you heal your gut without lifting a fork? And finally, week 7 is supplements, which are the ones that are worth your dollar, worth your time, and which are the ones that I want to throw hand grenades at. So that's the course in a nutshell. It actually is launching. So today's the first day of the course. People can register today. They can register tomorrow or Wednesday too, if they want to. Everything in the course will be available to all the people who register. And even if you were to register after today, you would still get access to all the materials. You would not miss anything. But tonight at 8 p.m. is a live call, and that's our kickoff party. And so for many people who want to do the course, you probably are going to want to be there for that.
When you say a call, is it actually a call or is it a Zoom?
It's a Zoom. It's a Zoom. Yeah, just like this.
Right. Let's see. So Misty said she's going to register for the course right after this. I'm thinking of doing, a couple of people said they wish they could if they could afford it. But you think about it, if you have a family, it's very, your whole family can be enjoying this. It's not like going to a conference where everybody has to get a ticket. You could just have your whole household enjoy it.
Yeah, I invested a lot into this course. And what I mean by that is just I put a lot of effort into making this the best course that I could possibly make. I actually beta tested it twice with small groups to make sure that I could refine it and not make it public until it was really ready. And the thing about it is I view it like this. It's like going to university to study, to take a class. And you could go to that school and study history or study economics, or through this course, you can go and study gut health, which I think is, effectively the most critical part of our health. You can study gut health, and the instructor is me. And I'm going to teach you everything that I think that you need over the course of 7 weeks to really optimize your gut.
I'm taking a business class that's way more than this. So I think this is I think it's I'm not complaining about the price, but I understand that people, they can buy your book then, right? There's a lot of great information in your book.
There's a lot of great information in my book. To me, there's a lot of information that's available that for each individual, you have to decide what works best for you. The course is not necessarily going to be something that 100% of people do. The book is a great option. And also, there's tons of, this is a free interview that we're doing. I've done a bazillion free interviews and podcasts.
Every day, practically. Somebody else is interviewing you on Instagram. You're so generous with your time, really.
And over 600 posts on Instagram that I've spent, literally 4 years investing energy into. And that's anyone can check that out whenever they want.
How is the course different from your book? People are asking.
The course is there's a couple things. Number one, there's topics that are taken on in the course that are simply not in the book because there wasn't the space and it wasn't in the narrative of the book. The narrative of the book is I want to connect to the person who is out there and unaware of the power that exists within their gut. I want to wake them up, show them this power, and then lay out the path of how to move forward. And the course is, number one, content that you don't find in the book. So for example, week 2 of the course is entirely about how do you find your true diagnosis. So like we take a deep dive into bloating, deep dive into constipation, diarrhea, abdominal pain. I have resources and guides to every single one of the things that I just mentioned. So you'll have special course materials that are helping you to basically facilitate your understanding of these topics. You know, week 3 is all about poop. There's literally no conversation in the book that is included in week 3 of the course. Week 5 of the course is all about your personal health journey, and we're taking a deep dive into stuff that's just not in the book. But then the other thing that I do is I take topics that are in the book, and I have no restrictions, no limitations in my ability to really take a deep dive into these things, with the understanding that my audience now is the person who really is serious about trying to heal and optimize their gut. So like food sensitivity. In the book, chapter 5, I talk about food sensitivity. I think it's probably the most important chapter of the book. But in week 4 of my course, I'm not just talking about it. I'm actually giving you the step-by-step protocol, including the worksheets that you need to actually go through that process of actually managing the food sensitivity to the finish line.
I just have to thank Sarah for her super chat donation. Whenever I have a great guest on, I get these. So thank you so much. And there is a question, is there a payment plan option for this course? Misty wants to know.
Yeah, I've had this question a few times, and it's something, this is my first time doing this online course. I did beta test it twice, but this is my first time like basically publicly opening this up. And this time we don't have payment plan options. I wouldn't rule out the possibility in the future. It's something that we may consider. So, but at least for right now, it's because, the issue is this is the full transparency, Chef AJ, is like, I don't have this big team working in a room somewhere. It's me and one other person. And that's it. And so we have to be sort of strategic about what are the things that are going to create more work for me, because I only have so much bandwidth.
I understand. And you give so much. A few more questions on the course. Is this only for people who have gut problems? Will it be offered again? And do we get to ask Dr. B questions personally if we're in the course?
It will be offered again. The exact date, I don't know, but it will be offered again. The course, by the way, if you guys can hear that bass, can you hear that? That's my neighbor. I apologize. They got some teenage kids. You will have the opportunity to ask questions during the course. So complete transparency. I cannot be your doctor by enrolling in this course. I would be jeopardizing my medical license if I were to do that. So I just can't be doing that. I can answer your questions. If it's questions like, well, I have this particular medical issue and I want you to tell me how to manage that, I can't do that. But what we do is every single week during the course, we have a live Q&A, and we basically go through questions pertinent to the material for that week. And so like literally tonight at 8 p.m., it's the kickoff party, but I'm also going to be doing a Q&A, and I'm going to be answering questions that people have already posted. What was the first part of the question? I'm sorry, I forgot.
Is this course only for people that have GI problems?
Yeah. So I view it like this. If you are serious about wanting to optimize your microbiome, this is the course for you. So it's not exclusively for people. I do tailor the course more towards people who have GI issues because I'm a gastroenterologist, and that's just a natural fit for me. But if you're serious about optimizing your microbiome, this is the course that's going to teach you how to do it.
That sounds Really great. And some of the people watching are health coaches. And even if they don't have this problem, I'm sure a lot of their clients do. So that might be, and that for them, it would be a business expense. That would be kind of cool. I don't know if this is a joke or not, but Lori said, do we have to get a colonoscopy before or during the course? That might be a joke, but you're going to learn to do your own colonoscopy from this course. Just kidding. Just kidding, of course. Now that would be some course, wouldn't it?
Well, I do. So it's actually, she brings up a great point, which is that I think that the best way to heal and optimize is to combine diet, lifestyle, some supplements, and then to engage in the right way with healthcare. So that means that you don't completely lean on healthcare and let it just kind of do whatever it wants. You're smart about it. You're a smart consumer. You know what questions to ask. And so when she asks, like, do I need to have a colonoscopy? Well, you may find through the education that you receive during this course that you discover, gosh, for these problems that I'm having, it actually kind of makes sense for me to do that. And that may help you to kind of get over any sort of inertia that you have. And I'll tell you, Chef AJ, that one of the things that I loved is when I beta tested the course, which I did in December and again in February. We had people who had been suffering with GI issues for more than 10 years. And because of the education that they received during the course, it helped them to go to their doctor. And we had multiple people identify a new diagnosis that they didn't even know that they had based upon the testing that they received. Nice. Not just colonoscopy.
When you say 8 p.m. for the kickoff party, is that Eastern time?
That's Eastern time. Yes.
Great.
8 p.m. Eastern time.
Well, Pat had a funny answer to the question, who is this course for? And she said, everyone who eats and poops.
I mean, I think that there is some truth to that, right? I do think that there's some truth to that. I mean, I think that there's value. I've created the course where I feel that I'm delivering value to any person who wants to understand how to optimize their microbiome.
Yeah. So this is great. I don't want to, I want to respect your time because we have gone a little over an hour. So is there anything more you want to say? I mean, we could always do questions, but hey, let them take the course.
Let's do a couple quick questions. I'm happy to answer questions.
See, this is what I love about him, guys. If you imagine how giving he is on these free interviews, imagine what it's going to be like being in class with him.
And this is the workbook. So just real quick about the course. This is the workbook. Okay. And I actually wrote the workbook myself. Like I didn't pay someone to create a workbook. I wrote it. And it's like writing a second book. I mean, it's 35 days of content. It's much more than 100 pages. The exact page count, I'm not totally sure, but it's more than 100 pages long. And you get the workbook, you get the videos. There's a private Facebook group where we connect. And I will say one thing, like if you're someone who's not really comfortable with the Facebook thing, you can totally do the course without the Facebook. You don't have to do the Facebook thing, but it is an option for those who want to engage with others who are kind of coming from the same place.
Nice. Okay. So Christy, we always give a little priority to people that write them in. So get on my mailing list if we bump it to the top. Christy says, can Dr. V talk about how you get off GERD medication?
Sure, happy to. This is actually a topic that I do discuss in the course, but let me just share a couple strategies that I think are important. Number one, you want to avoid the things that trigger GERD. The sad part about that is it's anything that's kind of fun. So it's not just alcohol and tobacco. It's also fried food. It's also chocolate, caffeine. So all of those things can trigger GERD. You want to make sure that you're not having any food after dinner time. So ideally early dinner, and then just water after dinner until you go to bed. Fiber is great for acid reflux. Not only fiber in your diet is fantastic. There was a study with a Mediterranean diet, which, as you know, Chef AJ, is a plant predominant diet. It's not 100% plant-based, but it's a plant predominant, like 90%. And the Mediterranean diet was beneficial, but also we have evidence that fiber, even as a supplement, can be beneficial to people who have acid reflux. So bottom line, fiber, eat more plants, cut down on the alcohol, cut down on the caffeine, drink more water. And those are some of the strategies that can really make a difference.
Nice. Lori said, is the course every Monday evening?
Every Monday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern time is the live Q&A. The course content itself is for you to digest at your own pace in the convenience and comfort of your own home. So like there's daily content that we will be releasing, but you're under no obligation to do it. You could like literally register for the course and not touch anything and start it a couple months from now if you wanted to. And everything that we do will be available, including anything that's live. If you can't make the live, no sweat. You can still submit your questions. I will answer them, and you can watch the recording.
So the lives will be recorded. And how long do people have access to the course? And Pat wants to know, would it be wise to let my GI doctor know about this course? I think so.
I mean, I think that, first of all, some of my friends who are GI doctors are going to be in the course with us. I've had people go through the course who are medical doctors who have found benefit to this course. And so I do think that your GI doctor would probably find this content very interesting. And I'm going to be giving you materials that you're probably going to be walking into your GI doctor's office and having a folder and be showing them. So, it's going to help you in those conversations. So how long do you get access to the materials? Okay. First of all, the workbook. The workbook is yours. This is a resource that will be yours for years to come. All right. The content, the Facebook group. The Facebook group, I have no plans to remove the Facebook group. Once it's created, you're a part of it. You get to do whatever you want in terms of enjoying that. With regard to the videos, you get access to the videos, all the video content for 1 year. The reason that I actually am I've thought about this a lot, and the reason why I've put a limit on this of 1 year is that it is my intention to continually update this course. I'm going to be continually trying to improve it and make it better. And so I don't want you to have out of date information. So that's why I limit it to 1 year. So for 1 year, you can watch the videos all you want. If you ever want to take the course again, such as like you have a friend and you want to do it with your friend, have them jump in and do the course too. There's a rate that we have established for people who are going to be repeat customers that is very, very, very small. It's a small fraction of the original cost, just basically so that the people who want to do it again, it's enough for us to know that they're really serious and want to do it. They're not just signing up to like take up space.
Let's see. Somebody asked, Marietta said, are you only accepting a certain amount of people?
No, there's no limitation in terms of the number of people who are in the course. We will be offering it again in the future. Basically anyone who feels that they have the need, the course is designed in a way where you can get access to it now, but there'll be additional opportunities in the future.
Nice. Joe says, I would like to ask Dr. Wilby about the effects of administering enemas and whether or not enemas are safe.
Enemas there are some risks of, for example, developing an abscess as a result of administering an enema. Not common in general. Administering an enema on occasion is safe. The concern that I have is that if you are repeatedly having to use enemas in order to have a bowel movement, it suggests that there's something wrong that we should be dealing with. Your strategy shouldn't be that you have to do an enema. I don't know that I have any patients that I tell them just do an enema every day. To me, that would signal that we need additional testing to understand what's going on.
Great. And one more question that was submitted by Susan. You talked earlier about what causes polyps to form, but her question is, what is the specific physiological mechanism by which a whole food plant exclusive diet can actually reverse colon polyps that already exist? Or can they?
So it is possible for them to regress, but we don't have good data. My son is in the house. This is my son, Liam.
Oh my God. Hi, Liam.
Liam's
I love
3.
That name.
He's turning 4 very soon. So he's a big boy.
Hey, Liam, have you read Fiber Fueled?
Hey, Liam, have you read Fiber Fueled? No? Do you like Fiber Fueled?
Oh, he's precious.
Hold it up. There you go. Hey, good job, man. All right. So to answer your question, Chef AJ, We do think that polyps can regress in some cases, but it's not something that we are able to like say, oh, well, if you have a polyp, rather than removing it, let's, do this from a dietary perspective instead of removing the polyp. To remove a polyp during a colonoscopy is so easy. You literally do it on the spot. So when we find a polyp during a colonoscopy, frankly, it would be bad medical practice to not just remove it, because the benefit so far outweighs the risk. So now, in terms of the specific pathophysiologic mechanisms, anyone who's read my book will recognize chapter 3, which is all about short chain fatty acids, butyrate, acetate, and propionate. And these short chain fatty acids do have direct mechanisms by which they can actually prevent colon cancer. And that, we think, is a large part of what is driving the benefits of a plant-based diet.
Nice. Well, you have your family, and this is a holiday, and you've generously given so much of your time. How long will the lives go? An hour, 2 hours?
Right now, the Q&A in the course, we're planning to be at least an hour.
Knowing you, that's 3.
So yeah, we'll see.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much. And I wish you success with the course like you did with the book. And if you guys can't take it this time, well, maybe take it next time, but at least check out the link that I've been posting and see all that is offered. And if it's not right for you, maybe it's right for your doctor or somebody, because it sounds like a great course, and I know I'm going to enroll in it, and I hope to see some of you there tonight. You have been just such a great supporter of my work, helping me so much with the GI Health Summit, with getting me like amazing doctors like you. I can't thank you so much. You're just such a wonderful resource, and you just help so many people. So thank you so much.
Oh, it's all my pleasure, Chef AJ. It's always a treat to connect with you. And I look forward to the day when this pandemic is over and we're having fun and we're drizzling balsamic all over the place and that kind of stuff.
And I look forward to the day when a golden retriever can sniff out colon cancer.
There we go. Wonderful.
All right. Take care, everybody.
All right. Bye, everyone. Thank you.